Hi, it's just my days off from rehearsal, and I just thought I would share some thoughts that I've been thinking. Um, I was looking at a note that I made because I've often thought about starting a podcast or another channel dedicated to my theater experiences. And I'm not famous. I have been doing theater for 22 years here in my little small town, and have done many productions. I've acted, I've been a singer, I've danced, I've directed, I've assistant directed, I've stage managed. I've pretty much done all of it at some level. Um, and I've in the course of 22 years, I've come up with a lot of things. A lot of things have happened. Some of them not so great, and some of them really funny. So anyway, I just thought maybe I would do some videos about that. But I don't know if anybody here would want to hear that. I just think of stuff and I think, well, I'm just going to share it. So that's what I'm going to do. Today I was thinking about when I was a little girl, how music was like the most important thing. I played with my friend. I had my best friend that lived next door when I was little. But this is like when I was like maybe 3. I have a picture of me sitting on the floor with my records and my little record player. And I got to thinking about how, sadly, music is not as big a part of my life as it was up until, the last 10 years or so. When I worked retail for 7 years, listening to telephones ringing, people talking on the overhead page, constantly people talking next to me, cash registers dinging, and just people talking, just blah, just noise for 10 hours a day. I just wanted to come home and hear nothing, maybe watch TV, but usually I would just fall asleep. Anyway, so filling my filling my mind with noise isn't as big a deal as it was back then. It wasn't when I was younger, until I started working in that environment, or actually till I started having kids. I really kind of had to scale that back because my mind was occupied with other things and I needed to be available. But anyway, it just made me think about how important music was to me, and how much music really got me through some really difficult times in my life. And then it became theater got me through these difficult times. When I was younger, my parents got divorced when I was 13. And that's like a shitty time to have your dad just leave and not really keep in touch very much. So music was my savior. Prior to that, I used to, when I was a kid, I was like 10, from 10 to 12, 13 maybe. I would play all our albums. We had albums. We had Mary Poppins, Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, and then some other musical soundtracks. We had the Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. We had some other Arthur Miller instrumental things. Anyway, I was the only one that ever really played that stuff. And then we've got 45s, the little records. For you young people, you would think, what the hell are you talking about? Well, they're little records. They had a big hole in it. You had to put a little thing on your stereo so that they could play. Well, I had some when I was really young that were 78s. They turned at 78 revolutions per minute. That's what 78 stood for. And it had the little hole. And I had a little record. It was the Blue Tail Fly, and it had Burl Ives singing, which was not anything to get excited about, but it had a picture of an outdoor, like a blue tail fly, and it was like a picture on the record, not a label. It was the record was this picture, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I used to just love that. Plus, I had a little rack that held your records. It was really shitty, really terrible, kind of like Slinky Dog in. Well, no, Slinky Dog's not that. Oh, sorry. I revert back. It was a little stand thing that it was gold, had little things to stick your records in, which was really terrible for your records. But it was great when you're 5, and you have the little records. But I had some that were yellow, some that were red, some that were black, and they were hard plastic. They were thick. They weren't like the vinyl. They were plastic, hard plastic. And I used to love to listen to my records on my little record player. And I just forgot about that until recently. And then I started, getting albums and doing that as I got into my teenage years. And in my teenage years, that music is what kept me from going off the deep end. And back to those, the albums, the Mary Poppins and all that, I used to pull all the curtains in the living room. My mom used to play bridge. She would go to our neighbor or to her, there was a group of women that got together and played bridge. They called themselves the Boozy Tuesdays or something. They played bridge on Tuesdays and drank one of the mothers made home brew. So they would sit there and get drunk and play bridge, I guess. I was clueless about that, but I just knew Mom was going to be gone. And I could pull all the curtains. My sister was gone. I don't know where my dad was at work, I guess. And no, my dad wasn't probably even there. But I used to pull the curtains and sing I was the entertainment of the living room. But anyway, that's where I learned all these songs, and they're still in there. I still know the words to almost all those songs. So that's kind of my history of music. And I just think how it has, if somebody had told me back then when I was this shy little person that nobody knew could sing or talk barely, if they had told me that I would be doing theater for 22 years and directing plays and starring in plays and singing and doing all this, I would have said, you're out of your mind. But when I look back, I can see that all these things that I did in my past led me to where I am today. And I think about when my son was killed on a motorcycle back in 2005, I was in the middle of a production. And so I had to go to Texas to bury him or to, honor him. And when I came back, they said, well, you don't have to finish. And I said, no, I need to do this. And I kept doing the play, which really helped me get over that heartache. Gave me something else to think about, so I wasn't just dwelling on how horrible everything was. And then fast forward again to 2019 when my husband died recently. We were in the middle of a production and I was selling tickets, plus I was in the show. And so I'd have to go be at the theater for a couple of hours a day while he was sick. And I didn't know he was dying. I just knew he was sick and trying to get him to go to the doctor. That's a whole other thing. But he died a week before we opened, but we had already sold all these tickets, and I had to do the show. And honestly, it helped me once again put my mind on something else. So it sounds callous and weird, but it really did keep me going. So if you're struggling with what do you do with yourself if you just lost a spouse or a significant anything, pet, anything in your life that is causing you grief, get involved in something. Do something for somebody else. Do something to keep you still have to grieve. Of course you have to grieve. That's really important. But do other things so that you don't get swallowed up by that grief, because it can totally take over. I mean, I swear I didn't know I could cry as much as I've cried when my son died. I had no idea that anything could hurt me so bad. But I had other boys that I had to raise, so I had to keep going. And I just, thank God I had my theater group, because those people helped me. That when you're in a play, you become like a little family. You're together for a few months, almost every night or several nights a week, rehearsing together. And when you're not on stage, you're making friendships with people that are also, not on stage at that time. And the fun things happen, silly things happen, bad things happen sometimes, but it's all such a great way to put yourself out there. So anyway, you don't have to do theater, but I would just say get involved in something. So anyway, that's kind of the very tip of the iceberg here. That's kind of the first thing I made a note about was records and my record player and how important that was to me. And then I think about how it's gotten me where I am today. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you, and um, let me know if you think this is something you'd want to know more about. I don't know. There are, it's just my life, but we've had a lot of interesting and sometimes really funny things happen. So with that, I will leave you, and I appreciate you again. Thank you for listening.